Hey guys, what's up? This is FalseBulls123. Welcome back to my channel. Now, I actually did a lot of reading this month, more than I was suspecting, mostly just because I had a kind of really shitty, just middle portion of this month. I'm going to get into a little bit of it in this review, but just know that I've had like a lot of life stuff happen recently, and so it's been a bit difficult. But being on this channel, actually making content, is kind of one of the things that keeps me going, gives me some stability in life. I literally started this channel when I was in one of the darkest parts of my life, when I was just like super fucked up emotionally, and so being able to actually get in front of a camera and be like, oh my goodness, give me likes and attention and validation is, bitches, that's where it's at. Now, there is something I do want to do, and I'm really excited to start it, and I finally have a TBR, picking thing. So, quite a few of the booktubers I love to watch, they have these really fun ways of coming up with a TBR. There's one I watch who does, a bingo, and she has, a little bingo machine, and, the little bingo ball rolls out, and she reads it, and she chooses a book like that. And other people have, different methods. And I love that idea. So I want to do something that was kind of like that. Kind of innovative, kind of niche, kind of unique. And so, like I said last time, I have an egg basket, and we're going to draw our first books on the TBR. So, let me just blindfold myself so it's fair, And this is the only thing I had that was suitable for a blindfold, because I don't know where all of my other ties that would match my outfit are. So I'm going to draw 4 of the eggs, and we're going to see. So hopefully I have this framed correctly, and let me try to, dear lordy. It's actually harder than I thought it was going to be. Okay, egg 1, egg 2, oops, looks like that one cracked. Ooh, egg 3. And egg 4. So, I only draw 4 eggs, every month, because that way I read about a book a month. That way I think it's, pretty... I would be able to actually meet that TBR. So, let's see which ones I picked. First one was Rammer Jammer Yellow Hammer by Warren St. John. We have The Oxbow Incident by Walter von Tilber. King Solomon's Mine by H.R. Haggard. And this is my wild card egg. It's literally just some sort of stone shaped like an egg. And so that means I get to pick whatever book I want. The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. I actually like how that TBR turned out. It kind of got a little bit of a theme to it that was unintentional, and it's going to be an interesting read for this month. Obviously, these aren't going to be the only books I'll probably read coming in May. Is it May? Yeah. These won't be the only books I'll read in May, but these will definitely be on my priority list, if that makes sense. So, now that we did that little preamble, I'm going to tidy up my desk in a second, and let's actually get into the books that I read this month. It's going to be a lot of fun. First up is Upchuck and the Rotten Willie, written by Bill Wallace. Upchuck and the Rotten Willie is the lovely story of a cat racist who befriends the one good dog that he discovers in his life. Honestly, the amount of dog racism that is in this book is appalling. Okay, I am not even freaking joking. Literally, Rotten Willie is a Rottweiler. Imagine that. And the cat in this book, Chuck, plays into the offensive stereotype that this young black dog is a violent criminal that only seeks to destroy him. And that is quite offensive. It is literally a over-the-top Brutus caricature, combined with the numerous amounts of cat supremacy found in this book that is just over-the-top blatant. I don't understand how anyone else can read it any other way. This is clearly cat fascist propaganda.
And said, Hal, it's about cats.
Instead, he rushed over to me. Purring, he rubbed his cheek against mine. I knew you could do it, Chuck, he lurled. You just got to have a little confidence in yourself. I know you can make it. When you freeze like that, it really scares me. Don't scare me like that anymore, okay? He purred. If we ever go back over Rocky's yard, just keep walking. Don't even think about it. Don't look down. Just go. We rubbed on each other for a while. Tom kept reminding me that I was a cat. Cats are sure-footed and brave and smart, not all like dogs. And he told me that I was one of the bravest and smartest and most sure-footed cats he had ever met. How the fuck is there any heterosexual explanation for these two characters? I'm sorry. Am I just misreading the explicit sexual tension between these two cats? Clearly, these cats are secret homosexual lovers.
And said, Hal, it's about cats.
Clearly, the skunk represents the apathetic bourgeoisie, while the cow represents the communist proletariat. Why else are both characters rendered completely alien in Chuck's binary social stratification?
And said, Hal, it's about cats.
These gay, racist, communist cats.
And said, Hal, it's about cats.
In all seriousness, though, Upchuck and the Rotten Willie is a chapter book written for elementary school-aged children. Some of the things I liked about this book was its use of defamiliarization. The story is from the perspective of a sheltered and fairly young cat who lives in, but doesn't ultimately understand, the human world. The characters in this book are powerless by their lack of knowledge and agency in a world controlled by the human owners. And it's refreshing to have a character try to explain what college is when they don't quite grasp a lot of aspects of human society. I also think it's a nice parallel for the reader. Obviously, the audience is fairly young, and so Wallace is explaining these concepts in a way that is digestible for his young audience. A lot of the themes in this book deal with loss. There's people moving away, going off to college, and even dying. Both Upchuck and Rotten Willie lose a loved one through an accident and the other through old age. And it's quite clear from the beginning of the book and from several other places that both of these characters are still grieving their loved ones. And so the book makes a lot of points to deal with grief, of acknowledging it, of allowing you to feel it, and also acknowledging that there's different ways that people grieve and need to grieve. I also made a joke about the cast being fascist earlier, and there is some level of bigotry that Chuck deals with. Chuck is used to a society where cats and dogs are constantly pitted against each other for reasons that are never truly realized by its characters. That's just how it is. So when Willie is introduced to Chuck's life, it upsets his racial perception of dogs. Willie wasn't socialized to hate cats and was taught to teach them as equals, and through that, Chuck eventually manages to gain empathy and set aside his bigotry. Obviously, Wallace didn't intend this book to be a subtle deconstruction of racial antagonism, and this analogy is fairly weak. Obviously, dogs don't exist in a society in which they are marginalized for a history of systematic oppression by the hands of an entrenched elite ruling caste of cats. But there is something to be said about not judging a book by its cover or some other trite moralizing bullshit, you know? Anyway, moving on to something that is surprisingly less complicated, even though this was written for middle grade kids instead of elementary school children. And that's The Chicken Doesn't Skate by Gordan Korman. So, a lot of middle grade writers have a gimmick, right? Carl Hyson likes to write about children activists who tie themselves to trees. Paul Zindel likes to see how many daddy issues he can fit in 300 pages before he kills off the manic pixie dream grandpa. And Andrew Clements is really into those hardworking children with the tiny hands, you know, so they can get into the machinery. But Gordan Korman's schlick is wacky ensemble casts that get up to hijinks. And I usually enjoy his books. Gordan Korman is probably one of my favorite middle grade writers. Let's just say this one didn't age well. But what is it about, one? I know, I never fucking shut up. The Chicken Doesn't Skate is a story about a class who all takes part in helping raise a chicken for a science experiment in some backwater, no one-horse hick town in the middle of bumfuck Minnesota. My apologies for people who live in that very specific part of Minnesota. And the hijinks ensue, as they do. I remember really enjoying the story as a kid, but looking back at it, I kinda hate it. And a lot of the reasons for that is, since Gordan Korman's stories are so character-driven, it's really an issue when all the characters are just egregious stereotypes. Let's take your, I guess, main character, who is your classic meathead jock. He, 1, likes sports, 2, likes to bully all of those fucking nerds, and 3, is disinterested in anything that doesn't revolve around his social status as the captain of the hockey team, to the point where his obsession with hockey borders on being a Canadian stereotype. I actually thought that this story took place in Canada until I reread the back cover, so the more you know. But don't worry, the cast is rounded out by a douchebag nerd who's better than you, and who human emotions do not compute. And an angry feminist, which, granted, was an interesting choice for a middle grade book, but still very much a stereotype. The last main character, if you can call him that, is Zachary Gustaf. Hopefully I pronounced that name correctly, who is an aspiring screenwriter and arguably one of the more interesting characters. Unfortunately, the cast hates him for no good established reason. Like, he's a little bit of a jerk sometimes, but not to the point where he's any more egregious than any of the other negative traits of other characters, so yeah, he's basically the butt monkey for the entire book, until it turns out, actually, he was good at sports the entire time, and therefore has value to society, because, fuck the fine arts, am I right? One of the reasons why I find these characters so egregious is that I have seen Gordan Korman write these tropes so much better in a lot of his other books. The character dynamic between a jock character who is prone to violence and this better than you douchebag nerd was done so much better in the Twinkie Squad. I know I mentioned it a lot, but it's because it was a really good book. And Korman perfected this hyper-intelligent, nerd, super genius character with Elmer Grimsdale from the Bruno and Boots series. This book just reads as a harem of rehashed, tired high school tropes. And if you remember my One of Us is Lying review, you'll probably remember how I feel about that. It's negatively. I will say this. There is one point I would like to congratulate Korman on in this book, and I really do enjoy the formatting of it. Each of the different chapters has its own sort of formatting style. It has its own distinct writing style from the character's voice and perspective, and they even sort of change up the formatting sometimes. What the fuck is his name? Zachary writes has like sections where he's doing screenwriting. The nerd character writes it like it's a bunch of lab notes, and so there is some level of interest from that. But overall, it was just a tired cliche that I was not enjoying. Let's move on to something that actually was surprisingly amazing, and that's Santa Paws by Nicholas Edwards. Now, I like to think that Christmas is a fun time for most people. A time of festivity, family, and warmth. Except as this puppy learns, marginalized groups like the homeless...
And said how?
No, I'm actually being serious. The blurb literally says, the worst winter ever, the worst time to be homeless. Like, it's very much intentionally a parallel. Santa Paws is the story of a puppy who gets orphaned the week before Christmas and then suddenly has to fend for himself in a cruel, unfeeling winter landscape. This book makes a deliberate effort to discuss how the holidays aren't always the perfect time for everyone, such as widowers, the homeless, and the elderly and disabled. It's also important to point out that Santa Paws is homeless, and part of his story arc is dealing with the physical and mental toll it takes on him as a person. This book is surprisingly gritty for what I would classify as a middle grade or younger, and it also has this sense of realism, almost like survival fiction, that just is very emotionally wrenching. That being said, even though he has to fend for himself through these difficult situations, Santa Paws is a good Samaritan. He chooses to help people, not because there's some tangible benefit for him, but because it simply feels like the right thing to do. I would compare this type of book to the type of movies that ABC Family would put on during Christmas. like 12 Dates of Christmas, Holidays in Handcuffs, and of course, Desperately Seeking Santa. Santa baby, all I really want is a day. Yes, please. That's all I really, really want. Santa baby, so hurry down my chimney tonight. Oh. The plot's a little obvious, the conflict resolution is beyond convenient, and the whole enterprise is saccharine. But that's also kind of the point. Even when movies and books like this present us with some truly down-and-out sad shit, it acts as a foil to its feel-good tone. Christmas for this kind of media is recognizing that the world is kind of a shitty place most of the time. But for 1 month out of the year, we can put aside our collective moping and try our hardest to have peace and goodwill on Earth. To remind us that the Christmas spirit isn't commercialism or some kind of better-than-you religious fervor, but the idea that society is only as strong as its weakest members. And that, hopefully, we can take that same kindness we feel for Christmas and have that remind us of the kindness we should have every day of the year. Either that or this book's about a kid who wants a dog for Christmas and the dog's just like a fucking Mary Sue. Like, what do I even know, you know? Like, what am I, a booktuber? Ew. So, now that we read a children's book that was surprisingly deep, let's read the children's book that was surprisingly a ripoff. And that's Invasion of the Body Squeezers, Part 2, by Earl Stine. Now, I first want to mention that this is a Goosebumps Series 2000, which, ironically enough, did not come out after the Millennium, but was actually published starting in 1988, with the last book, the 25th book in the series, being published in 2000. This came out in 1998, in case anybody cares. So, I literally found this book in some random dusty corner of my house, and I can safely say that I was not welcome to the new millennium of fear, as it says on the back. Have you ever seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers? You know, the movie about alien invasion and pod people that was definitely not about communism and or McCarthyism? You know that one. Well, congratulations. You know the basic plot to this book. You also know the basic plot to every alien invasion movie, book, and TV show ever made. It features fantastic protagonist, generic American boy, running around with a tinfoil hat, and for some reason, nobody believes in space aliens? Nani? Honestly, I was half convinced that this kid was having a severe psychotic break the entire time, and he was actually in the middle of a full-blown paranoid delusion. But that would have been actually interesting, and this is a children's book. All in all, it doesn't have the realism or grit that made the Fear Street series interesting, and it doesn't have... and it's too weak of a story to make its campy elements really work. The OG Goosebumps was campy AF, but it had relatable, interesting characters that helped ground the more fantastical elements. Having an irrational protagonist like this just weakens Stine's writing. So I am going to get into a discussion about why this book doesn't work on a fundamental level, but it is a bit long and a little niche, so just like my Black Jesus discussion that I had in that review a couple months back, I'm going to put a timestamp here so you can jump forward to more book reviewing, because this is really more of a literary discussion in general. So, there we go. If you want to skip forward, please do so. If you don't, let's get into it, fam. I think one of the main issues of this book is how it's presented. In other Goosebumps books, you will have similar characters who will try to convince adults that monsters exist, and of course, adults don't believe them. That's part and parcel for children's fiction. However, in those stories, the fantastical elements are presented in what's called a secret world or masquerade trope, where magic or aliens or superheroes or what have you exist but are not known about by mainstream society. It's hidden. However, This book is a blatant rip-off of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and therefore is not presented as a secret world, but as a conspiracy thriller. Conspiracy stories like Invasion of the Body Snatcher or Rosemary's Baby relies on the character and therefore the audience to question their sanity. The entire point of the conspiracy is meant to gaslight them, as they fall deeper into paranoia. Now, there are two things that makes conspiracy stories have some credibility to make us trust the narrator as reliable. First, having some ally who knows about the conspiracy, having a third party who can confirm the main character's suspicions, helps validate the threat to us. Since another person is saying, hey, this is real, you don't feel that this idea is only present in the character's head. Second is generally has to do with the medium of film. If I can see both the main character and whatever conspiracy action is presented on the screen at the same time, my response as an observer is that what I'm seeing is real. There are of course exceptions to these rules, and conspiracy stories, like mysteries, benefit by challenging your assumptions about the story. Rules, especially in conspiracy stories, are meant to be broken, just as your trust in reality in a conspiracy story is meant to be broken. Any conspiracy theory will leave the character and therefore the audience uneasy. A conspiracy is supposed to feel overpowering, and any victory the protagonist feels should be pyrrhic. So taking that into account, it explains why this book fails so deeply. There's little grounding for us to trust the character as a reliable narrator. The non-visual medium works against our ingrained biases, and at a fundamental level, this book misunderstands conspiracy stories by telegraphing the story beats and by presenting us a power fantasy happy ending. So, this book really can't work in the way that Stein wants it to, because it really misunderstands the tropes and conventions it's using and blatantly ripping off. So, yeah, that's a very long, in-depth discussion of why I disliked this specific book, written for children, and published over 20 years ago. So, the Holding Place months ago for this book finally popped up, and so the next thing I read was The Umbrella Academy, Volume 1. Woo! First off, did you know this is written by Gerald Way? Yes, that Gerald Way. Like, Your Body's a Haunted House, Gerald Way. Like, Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway's Hispando, Gerald Way. Like, every emo girl's daddy. Even though there's like 15 other pop punk singers who could probably step on you if you ask, not that I have, because they're cool like that, Gerald Way. You know that one. So real talk, I saw the Netflix show first, so I'm a little biased. But I will say I liked it more. It's just, it fleshed the characters more, and added representation, and I thought the pacing was a little better. But let's pretend that I've never seen the high-quality comic adaptations, and look at this with a fresh pair of eyes, right? Fresh pair of eyes. First impression, I got League of Extraordinary Gentlemen vibes with this. You have this complexity in your world, you have these irrelevant and shocking tone, and the whole thing seems to be a satire of an entire genre and era of literature. While League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was a tongue-in-cheek steampunk adaptation of 19th century adventure stories, Umbrella Academy seems to be a tongue-in-cheek reinterpretation of superhero comics. As beginning volumes go, I enjoyed it. It introduced the characters, it gave us some juicy character conflicts that we can expand upon, and it gave us a satisfying villain for the first volume, which I definitely didn't really get that main antagonist in the show. But I will say that while I enjoyed the book, I'd have to fully read both the comics and rewatch the Netflix adaptation to really tell you which one I enjoyed more. So we're going to move on, and it's at this point in the video I want to talk about something important. I mean, I already talked about racism and homelessness and mental illness and all this other shit, but here goes. So, that life stuff I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Basically, my mom passed away this month. It's something that I've been trying to deal with financially, emotionally, all the other ways you deal with dead people. And so, it is definitely something I've been going through. That's one of the reasons why I read so much this month, is just because instead of doing like the 15 other things I usually do besides reading books, I just kind of laid in bed, and this was kind of something that was sort of low energy, sort of the escapism that I could have emotionally processed this month. And so, one of the reasons why I chose to read Millennium Snow again, you've seen this on my channel, is because it was one of my mom's favorite stories. My mom actually owned this book series. I was just holding on to it and meaning to give it back to her, and it never happened. So I thought, as sort of a remembrance for my mom, I would reread the series, kind of have that catharsis, and yeah. My mom really loved vampire stories. You like Vampire Diaries, Rosario X Vampire, Twilight, you name it. My mom, if it had like if it had a sexy pointy fanboy on it, she would love the shit out of it. And my mom actually used to write vampire stories. She had a completed novel that she had finished. I don't know if she ever published it, but it was written. And she was working on a second novel sometime when she had passed, and they were all about vampires as well. So this was a trope that my mom really, truly loved. My mom also loved manga and anime. Like, that's one of the things we would bond over. And both of us absolutely adored Ouran High School Host Club, which is also written by Bisco Hatori. Ouran Host Club is, if I remember correctly, Hatori's breakout manga. I think that's what it's called. It's basically the thing that made her big. But her first story was, of course, Millennium Snow. Now, Ryan, what is that about? Because I'm kind of like, getting away from the point. I like to call Millennium Snow the Twilight of anime. And no, I haven't seen Twilight, so sue me, I'm trash. The story follows Chiyuki Masoka, who is a tragic wife of heart issues, that meets a tsundere vampire who's sex-averse. Her immediate action is, "Ooh, woo, Vamp Daddy, why don't you fang-fuck me so I can be immortal?" And his reaction is like, "Ew, humans." And like, immortality's a curse, you don't want this bitch. And basically what happens is she becomes a beta cuck orbiter until he decides to like fuck her. So that's the tea, that's the plot. She also gets a second husbando who's blonde because it's an anime, and that's just what they do in animes. And he's a werewolf because of course he is. The blonde guy's name is Satsuki, by the way, and Hatori kind of forgets that he exists, but he's really mostly there for comic relief and to act as a second foil for our Vamp-Daddy Toya. There's not really much to say about this series. It's mostly a silly rom-com adventure that occasionally gets into edgy grimdark bullshit. Like that one time her cousin comes to town and kidnaps her because he's a fucking creepy incel, and she forgives him? He tied you up, sweetie! That's not love, that's possession! Get yourself a restraining order! Beat his ass! Like, he ain't shit, honey! Put his name in the book. Like, what are you doing, okay? You can't be that big of a cinnamon bun. Sometimes you gotta be spicy, okay? Sometimes you gotta burn a motherfucker. I will say, obviously, that this was Hatori's first published work, and it's going to be a little rough around the edges. It was also serialized in magazines before it was published in a tankobon. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not Japanese, or that good of a weeb, just saying. But so it is very episodic. All in all, I thought it was a good read. It just wasn't my favorite by this author. Moving on, we have the 68 Rooms by Marianne Malone. And apparently this is a series, and nobody told me it was a series. And that was super heckin' rude of you, just saying. So I'm gonna fucking apologize, okay? And yes, if you want, I will get all of these books and read them as like a reading blog, and we'll have a fun time. But yeah, comment down below if you want me to read all these books as a series. Like, that'd be fun. I might do it anyway, even if you don't comment down below. But please comment down below. We love that engagement, hun. But 68 Rooms is about a girl named Ruthie who's bored by her stable, lower middle class life. It's just, they don't struggle to pay the bills that much, so it's not like she really has like conflict in her life. That's just how it works. She needs some adventure. Like, discovering a hidden tomb of priceless indigenous artifacts that she can steal from, like, people's cultures, or robbing a bank, or getting entrenched in a web of intrigue where everyone has a secret and you can trust no one. This all changes one day when she goes to the Chicago Museum of Art and visits the Thorn Rooms, which, if you don't know, because you're not in the know, and you're not with it, but if you don't know, the Thorn Rooms are a series of miniature dioramas of historical rooms in Europe and America that are like made in the 60s or something. They're pretty interesting. I thought it was a really interesting sort of real-world thing to write a fantasy book about. But skip ahead a bit, basically, and you can, like, shrink down and go in the cool little miniature rooms. What's fun? Honestly, such a smart idea. You know, like, this is what we want in the tiny people stories. One of the things I really enjoyed about this book was its attention to detail. There was a lot of discussion of art, and so the art scene of Chicago, which, granted, was fictional. I looked up, like people mentioned, and they were not real, so that was kind of a bummer, you know. I wanted to be up in the club with some pajama, if you know what I mean. Also, please tell me you know what that means, otherwise the joke feels really stupid. But, yeah, and there's also these discussions of antiques and interior design, and I'm slowly realizing why I kind of have these weird obsessions with antiques and interior design now, so thanks, Malone. I now have too many books on old houses, and that's your fault. There's attention to detail, discussing all the intricate parts of the artwork and the furniture and the rooms themselves, just really brought this amazing amount of texture to the story. And that's one thing I really enjoyed, was just how detailed and how vibrant Malone painted this world. It really felt immersive, if that makes sense. You know, like the whole thing, it was a mood. I will say this book is a bit hefty. It's only 256 pages, which still is a full-length novel, but there's a lot of subplots that need to get resolved, and the way the pacing happens is much more a sort of slow burn, kind of more relaxed type of story. We're enjoying ourselves. We're taking our time. We're stopping to smell the roses. And honestly, I like it for the book. I think it works for the style, for the writing, and overall, it is a solid, chunky read. So, like I said, it was a good time for me. It was an interesting premise, and it just had a really great writing style. Definitely one of my favorite books that I read as a kid. So, this review of mostly children's books has been kind of heavy for some reason, because I'm an edgy bitch, let's be honest. But, so, let's talk about something that's a little bit lighter. And that is, of course, a theocratic state mass-murdering people through kangaroo courts manned by a self-righteous cabal of religious zealots for monetary gain. That is, of course, Nightmare in Red by Richard Fried. Wait. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's The Crucible by Arthur Miller. So, here's the tea. This play was apparently super allegorical, and nobody told me, which, once again, was kind of rude. Just saying. And I miss a lot of the important context. So I miss a lot of the important subtext when consuming this story. There's not much I can really say of value about the book, given, I had a very cursory reading of it. So to give it a fair shake, please enjoy this mini documentary on McCarthyism or something. And if you don't want to watch that, even though I'll probably put a lot of time editing it, here's another time. Hopefully, I did a good enough job with the previous segment to get across the fact that Miller wasn't that capitalistic, if you get what I mean. He wasn't the most capitalist-loving person in the world. This video is getting really, really long. It's probably going to be at least 40 minutes or something, so I'm not going to dive into all of these deep themes from this, but I will give you my first impressions of this play. As I was reading the story, I couldn't help but feel this relatability to it, even though this book was written in the 40s, It was this constant disillusionment with this capitalist rat race, this desire to obtain tangible wealth, this romanticization of the pastoral life, this yearning for economic stability, that is still felt to this day. Death of a Salesman is an uncomfortable play to watch because Miller, like all good playwrights, somehow manages to put a reflection of ourselves on the stage. Not a perfect reflection, but a glass just dark enough to catch a glimpse of a familiar face. You know what I mean? Now, as you might have guessed, there is a death in this play. And unfortunately, I've had a lot of friends and family recently, myself included, who have lost a loved one. And I read something on one of the pages of this play that really spoke to me, by which I mean it made me break down and sob like a little baby bitch in the middle of a church during, like, the half hour before we started memorial. So I thought, I would share this with you, and we could all have a good cry later on today. Forgive me, dear. I can't cry. I don't know what it is, but I can't cry. I don't understand it. Why did you ever do that? Help me, Willie. I can't cry. It seems to me that you're just on another trip. I keep expecting you, Willie, dear. I can't cry. Why did you do it? I search, and I search, and I search it, and I can't understand it, Willie. I made the last payment on the house today. Today, dear. And there'll be nobody home. We're free. We're free and clear. We're free. We're free. We're free. And that is the last sentence of the play. So, yeah. So kind of ending, this video on a bummer. Well, it's kind of been a bummer recently, so I'm sorry for not being all sunshine and sparkles, shining happy people or some shit, But, yeah. I want to thank you guys for watching this video all the way to the end. Give me a second. Okay. So guys, thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Feel free to comment down below if you liked my outfit today, if you liked the books I read today, anything like that. Give me suggestions, give me tips, give me engagement. You know how it goes, boo. And also, if you're enjoying these videos, if you like watching me, feel free to subscribe. You are allowed to do that. I will let you. But, there's a little red button down there or something. Subscribe. I mean, what's the harm, You're going to see more of me in your feed. I don't think that would be a bad thing, honey. But, yeah. There's also ways that you can engage with my channel. Feel free to do so. But if you don't, just remember. Wash your hands. Tell your loved ones you love them. Live every single day trying to be a better and better person. This is FalseBulls123, and your guest and I'm signing out. Well, I am thirsty as shit, actually. I'll go por favor. I would compare this type of book to things like ABC, like the type of... Fuck me. Happy shiny people. Happy shiny... I don't know the song. What's it? Happiness shiny people? I don't know the lyrics around. Okay. So, moving on, we have this... Oh, shit. It's okay. Not a perfect reflection. We're going to have a hot girl summer. So I'm reading the Crucible. I'm going to try, actually get a few more chapters in. And my mom's here with me. So let's pan and see my beautiful mama.
Hello.
Yeah, that's my mom. So what you reading today, Mom?
I'm reading the... So you want to be a wizard?
So you want to be a wizard? Oh, yeah. Can you tell listeners what it's about?
It's about a girlfriend that want to be a wizard book. She reads about how to be a wizard and meets a boy who steals her pen. And now she's trying to find him to get her pen back.
See, I love you, Mom, because I know that's exactly the plot, but I love you so much, Mother. You know that? And how many pages did you get, Mom?
I'm not sure.
That was interesting.
Page 32 to page 47.
32 to 47? That's awesome, Mama. High five. Oh, yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I've never done a reading sprint before. Did you enjoy it, Mom?
I did it after my second stroke. I didn't think I'd read ever again.
Well, Mama, don't you think those negative thoughts. You're gonna get all them things done. You're gonna run a marathon. Well,
I did that the other night in my dream.
see, it was in your dream, but it still counts, Mama.
Okay.
Anyway.